recording this on my phone since it is much better quality than my laptop. I've been having a lot of thoughts thinking about, what am I going to make a video about next? There are so many life experiences I could touch on, but I think what I'm feeling like I want to talk about right now is my experience. I need to focus up. My experience through emotional dependency, numbing, and codependency. Because for me, they all really go pretty hand in hand. And then ultimately, emotional regulation at the end, being like the relief to it all. Growing up, though I had a great, privileged, blessed childhood, I, like many others, did not have role models for emotional regulation. My mother was, or is, more shut down, not a big expresser when it comes to emotions or like a checker-inner. Like, I have memories where it's like, I would only really get that type of motherly loving attention if I was like crying or like if shit hit the fan. And my dad, while being kind of like the fun guy, was also like very emotionally reactive. You know, you didn't know when he would like be mad at you for something that you messed up on. So it kind of kept, I think, everyone in the house in a way, but specifically me, I'm talking about myself, on my toes. And then when it was Rachel, it's like, fuck. Like, is this going to be good or bad? Which is like a universal experience. Which is crazy. When I was homeschooled. Going from being homeschooled to then doing public high school and getting a phone for the first time, and then my brother being diagnosed with cancer right around that same time also, my phone became a huge distraction for me, and to this day I struggle with phone addiction and internet addiction. I didn't realize how bad it was until looking back at it in hindsight. But I realized that ever since high school, I've been numbing myself and distracting myself. In college, it was my phone and drugs. I smoked lots of weed. It was pretty normalized. I went to a liberal arts college and everyone smoked copious amounts of weed and also cigarettes and also did shrooms and also did acid. And some people did more than that, you know. But it was a pretty big weed culture, so I didn't really see it as a problem. And it wasn't until I got COVID and stopped smoking that I guess after that realized that, like, wow, I spent a lot of time in college, like, using weed to feel better, which is in essence, like a numbing device. Like, you're not happy with how you feel right now and you need to change that. Like, a lot of times when I find myself scrolling, it's like to numb, to pacify, or because I'm bored, or because I'm anxious, which ironically, the phone gives me more anxiety, and I would say that's a pretty common experience, that phones create a certain technology, scrolling and that type of thing, create a certain type of anxiety. When I was in high school, I was pretty emotionally reactive like my father. Very, like, big and loud, and it was pretty exemplified to me through both sides of my family dynamic, that whoever was the loudest, the funniest, or could express their needs the loudest, like, got their way and was praised and was loved. Like, especially, like, being funny was like big currency from my perspective. Maybe that's not the way other people experience it, but like the people with the biggest personalities and the biggest laughs and the biggest this and the whatever, like, got the attention and the spotlight and the love and the praise. And, you know, that's what every person and kid wants, is that praise. I was like praised pretty consistently through my childhood, and then getting into high school that dwindled, and in college it dwindles even more. And when I was in high school, I numbed not just through anime and watching a lot of TV and always being on Instagram and making memes and like diving into this whole fictional world and like not really being present, but also boys. I stopped getting that validation that I got from my parents as I got older and as they got kind of, busy with my brother who was dying of cancer. Um, and I was on Tinder. I wasn't meeting up with people, but I was sexting a lot. And it was really exciting to get to explore my sexuality in that way. But as then the sexting and the messaging moved into college and beyond, I really realized after the fact that what I was doing is searching for that validation. And yeah, really just validation, wanting to be praised for who I am or how I look and have that connection and that reassurance that someone's going to be there in my phone to text. It was always someone was in the rotation to text or sext with. And with the internet, like, your capacity to find someone like that is limitless. You can always have someone to do that with if you look. That was a big number and to like make me feel better, because I truly in high school believed I was ugly, like, and I still had that internal that I was just like an ugly teenager, just how like a lot of teenagers are ugly, but like that's something that's going to be hard for me to rethink that belief. So getting that validation felt even better when it's like I don't have that own self-confidence. All my self-confidence was coming from being masculine and being more practical than everyone else and being smarter than everyone else and having this sort of God complex in high school, but like not really getting the validation for my physical features, and dating apps get into that. And that behavior continued through college, and I got my first boyfriend and he was great, super chill guy. We still talk. And he was 1 year older than me, and he graduated, and we broke up because I didn't want to do long distance. But I would call him all the time. And he's such a sweet guy, and he likes the attention of being talked to. So that was probably the first time in my life when my emotional dependency on others really came out. Because in college, I wasn't really, there was an emotional dependency on the men I was texting as well, but then it became more obvious as I was calling the same person multiple times a day, between classes, during meals. Really, I was so anxious. I was having such a hard time at college. I was having a hard time at college the whole time I was there, which is why drugs made it easier. I had some friends, but not a lot of deep connections. Well, that's not true. I had one deep connection, and then my last final year, I had another deep connection, which, friendships are great, but when you're in that state, when I was in that state of being so anxious, so socially anxious, so preoccupied what people think of me, like, it was so much easier to just numb out and, like, focus on another person. And as I graduated college, I think I was able to reflect and I think at one point I kind of told my ex, I was like, I think that, like, we talk too much. Like, but I definitely didn't stop calling him, and still, from when we broke up to very recently, was displaying actions that would point towards an emotional dependency issue. Oh, I feel like there's ringing in my ears. No? Okay. Like, in the way that I've been able to identify it recently, it's like whenever I had a negative feeling, bored, lonely, sad, anxious, depressed, the immediate response was call someone, call a friend, call my ex, I almost said his name, call my ex, and, just go through the roster, like, not the roster, but, like, call my sister, call my mom, call my dad, call my aunt, call my cousin, until someone picks up. Which is kind of crazy to look back on it, but like I said, like, no one's parents really teach you emotional regulation. And up until that point, I'd been distracting, numbing, and had a huge social media issue and was, you know, trying to garner validation through there, I guess I'll touch on this. I've used social media to mediate my feelings before, where it's posting my feelings on my story, posting pictures of myself to try to get that validation, to get that connection, because I feel lonely, because I want, like I said, the connection, which ultimately, for me, engaging in social media only makes me more anxious and I realized more lonely. Like, since getting off of it, I'm less lonely without actually having like a partner or like more friends around me, because yeah, I'm able to be more present for myself and give myself what I need when I need it, and without like jumping to those numbers, like I'm actually able to identify the needs and satisfy the needs in a way that like is like, oh, I'm showing up for myself, so that means I'm here for myself. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about the emotional dependency bit, but it really, doing that took down my confidence and my self-reliance, because it became such a nasty habit to go to others to inform me on how I should be feeling, or validate how I was feeling, or relate to how I was feeling, when, as one girl said, only you can truly validate yourself, because only you have lived your experiences and your life and have your feelings and your thoughts. You know, like only you can truly understand and appreciate what you're going through and what's happening. So in that way, like I was like, oh, so like everybody else's opinion is irrelevant. Like that was one thing that I realized. Like, maybe I'll link this girl's videos, but like I also realized that a big thing I was doing was worrying about the opinions of other people around me, which is partially a social anxiety thing, but in being able to be conscious about it, it also is kind of like an emotional dependency or codependency issue, because you're like searching for your validation through this approval, hoping that someone's opinions. It's just sick and it's twisted, and it's like, I think very social media based too, and social anxiety based, and it's like tough to deal with when you like, I walk outside and I'm like at the Walmart and I like see, particularly men, it's usually men that I'm worrying about what they're thinking about me, and I'm like so in my head, so anxious. And then one thing that's really helped me is like, wait, what do I think about myself? Because if I knew any of these motherfuckers that I'm worried about, I probably wouldn't respect them or even maybe really even like them. So that's one way that I kind of check in with myself, which then, as a side effect, I guess, kind of helps me regulate my emotions, because it's like, if I'm feeling socially anxious, and it's because of my thoughts, because I'm worried about other people's opinions, and I can validate myself and be like, wait, do we care? Like, do we actually care? Is it actually important? I feel like this is seeping into like a whole nother topic, but I'm able to sympathize with myself, that craving for male validation and like approval, because we live in a male dominated society, and that validation is like kind of representative of like one of the small ways that women are able to feel safe or like have a sort of power. Because it's like, for me in my head, there used to be, and maybe still is sometimes, this thought where it's like, if a man's gonna back me up, if a man can validate me, that means that like I guess it just made me feel more safe, which then like made having a partner like pretty addicting in that way, because it kind of soothed my social anxiety. It definitely soothed my social anxiety. I even became kind of codependent on my one friend when I was working on the farm. I didn't really want to do anything by myself except for maybe go to the grocery store, because I think mainly social anxiety, and I just didn't see the point or the fun in it if I didn't have someone else to have fun with. I'll move into a codependency bit. So there was my first ex, and there was like signs of codependency with like calling him all the time, spending all my time talking to him. But then more recently, my third ex, I was in a really hard place and had been like slowly pushing myself there, and then physically I was in a foreign country. No friends, no family. And really quickly got into a relationship and really quickly started basing all of my feelings off of him. And not just my feelings off of him, but like I developed this tendency, and this happens to me at other times too, especially when you see things on social media that are horrifying, but where I would feel his feelings for him or also. And a big thing that helped me when I feel myself kind of spiraling out of control when I'm engaging with another person is to kind of disengage and center myself and say, hey, are the feelings you're feeling my feelings, or are they somebody else's feelings? Like, am I genuinely in this moment right now feeling sad and depressed, or am I picking up on the sorrow of this person who's expressing that sorrow and depression? Like, when I like have to hear like sexual assault stories because they just like pop up on your page or in books or things like that, I'm like, it's really hard to not like get into a pit. And so this is a good emotional regulation practice for me where it's like, Rachel, I keep on saying my name, where I'm like, is this, like, I have to remind myself that this isn't my experience. This didn't happen to me. This isn't my burden to bear. And I kind of like imagine taking whatever that feeling or thing is that's not mine or that I don't want anymore, and like either giving it back to the person or releasing it into the void. Because ultimately, whatever horrible thing happened to that person, they're okay now. Like, that's a past event. And my most recent ex, he trauma dumped on me a lot. And I was carrying all of that weight and pain around of his SA and homelessness and drug abuse and loneliness and all these things. And it would really weigh on me and get to me. And I had to be like, wait, he's fine. And that's in the past. And like, that's not my pain or burden to carry. So that's one thing that helps me with emotional regulation. The checking in with myself when I'm like searching for external validation of like what I actually think. Handing people's feelings back to them and like not allowing other people's pain to become my pain. When I have a negative feeling, not immediately reaching out to someone and letting myself sit with it and like kind of process it and like check in with myself to see what I really need instead of distracting myself with a call to another person. So that kind of touches on the last bit of that codependency, because I was, basing all of my feelings, and I know other people have experienced this where it's like, you feel extra good if like the boy you like texts you. I hate to break it to you, girl, that's poor emotional regulation, because you're outsourcing your confidence. I was outsourcing my confidence, outsourcing my self-love and my self-worth. So being able to bring those back into myself by identifying the things in my life that were preventing that connection have really helped. Back around to the numbing, like, I have been able to get off of social media and even recently found myself scrolling on YouTube more than I would have liked to see. So I uninstalled it because ultimately when I'm scrolling, it's because I'm bored. And boredom's not bad. Boredom's actually really good and really healthy and really necessary, because I feel like a lot of the times when I'm scrolling because I'm bored, it's like maybe I'm anxious and I'm like worried about something that I have to do and I'm like putting it off and I like don't want to think about it, or maybe I'm tired and I like don't really want to quite take that nap, or maybe I'm like uncomfortable and if I checked in with myself, it's like I'm hungry. An example of me like being able to practice these things in real time was I was at this outdoor free concert was taking too long for the music to start, and I was doubting whether I would go. But I was like, hey, hey, you said you would go, and even if it's just to prove to yourself that like you're capable, because my social anxiety really gets in the way of me doing things, because I'm just like, oh, it's not worth it, I won't have fun. But that's not the point. The point is to make the investment in trying. So I was there trying, and I kind of walk into the forest along this path that they have, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, damn. And I've been getting kind of in my head because I'd seen like a couple semi-attractive men around, or one maybe, and I was like imagining him in my head and imagining him like witnessing me, because my whole life I've struggled with imagining people watching me, which I think is also tied to like social anxiety and maybe like validation. Like I used to imagine I had a stalker when I was younger that was like across the window, and then like when I was talking to a boy on Tinder and I was like 14 and in dance class, I'd imagine him sitting there on the side watching me dance. Anyone that I'm arguing with or whatever, I really bring people into my head. So I brought this person in my head and was feeling like, and I was sitting on this bench and I was like, damn, I really want some company. And I was like, wait, no, I want validation. Or maybe the other way around. Either way, then I was like, no, what I really want is physical touch. Like I want to be able to like lie down and put my head on someone's lap and just curl up and like relax. And I was like, no, what I really want is a nap. So I got up and I went home. Because, you know, that's what I wanted. And so I gave it to myself and I tried to do my thing. And that's not to say that like you shouldn't do things when you don't want to and like stick it through or whatever, but yeah, that's been kind of like the roundabout story of like my history with numbing, my history with emotional dependency. Yeah, because the emotional dependency also creates a sort of helplessness. I'd really taken on this sense of helplessness, which I was able to identify was kind of based off of like a locus of control format, where it's like I was trying to control things that I had no control over and wasn't taking control of the things I did have control of. I was all mixed up in my head about like what was possible. Like for me, I have a lot of food allergies. So when I eat something that has my thing that I'm allergic to, I used to get really shut down and really hopeless and really helpless. And I think in being able to, one, identify that like I have a certain control over that situation and it's not the end of the world, that helps with like emotional regulation and just self-confidence and self-reliance and self-love. But also, what was the other side of this? Locus of control, learned helplessness. I feel like there's another side. That's okay. I'll move on. Shifting the locus of control to me gives me more autonomy in my life. Yeah. How does that relate back to numbing or... Yeah. What's really interesting is that pattern of like the kind of helplessness and because it's like your emotions are everywhere and when I'm in those moments of like the shutdownness, I just want someone else to take over and help me. Like I want to rely on another person to fix the problem for me. And that's definitely something I learned from my mother. It was so funny the other day because she'd planned out a day to do something and she was supposed to get certain pieces in the mail to do the project and they didn't come. And the way that I knew that like the emotional storm was about to hit and like her like shutting down and getting upset about it was about to hit, I was like, oh, that's me. I do that. I was like, I don't want to do that when I'm 30. So yeah. I've watched a couple emotional regulation videos and it really just seems the crux of it is being present with your feelings, validating your feelings for yourself, and then like acting appropriately. I still have those urges to reach out to my ex or hit up a friend, or even, an additional part of this, the emotional dependency and the validation seeking, it's not just people. And I feel like I'll make another video that kind of goes into this in a little bit more depth, but like when I took out social media, I realized I was still looking things up that I didn't necessarily need to be looking up things because I didn't quite rely on my own knowledge or capability to understand it on my own, even though I most likely have all of the tools. This type of grasping at external information to understand internally, or even if it's like something simple, like I was thinking about doing like breathing exercises because like the lungs are connected to the emotion of grief, and I was trying to process some grief, and I was like, I could look up, breathing exercises specifically for grief. And then I was like, wait, I know I know a couple breathing exercises. I don't need to go try to be perfect and like perfectly optimize the breathing exercise by it being like something specifically targeted to, like when I look up reviews for supplements, like it doesn't really matter. Those are all other people's opinions. What is important is my own experience. And ultimately, like what I've realized about myself is I'm very perfectionistic and kind of afraid of things maybe not going my way. And I try to avoid that through excessive information gathering. And after I realized that, I was like, damn, that's not really putting a lot of trust in myself. So I've tried to stop excessive information gathering. And it's still hard because like I'll still have questions and like be thinking about things and like want to get someone else's perspective from it. And sometimes it's really helpful, and sometimes it's like, this is pointless, especially when I was going through a very emotional time during the breakup with the person I was codependent on, because that was a hugely messy situation, and untangling my whole identity and self-worth from another person and like coming back to who I am, and just the grief and the sorrow of lost opportunity and a lost future and all this stuff. I was like looking on Reddit a lot. I was like, is it normal to feel this way? And at the end of the day, like, yes, the answer is yes. Like, no one's going to be able to tell you that, like, well, yeah, maybe someone could tell you that, like, what you're feeling is normal, but no one's going to make you feel like what you're feeling is normal until I started, had enough space from it and was able to be like, yeah, that's a totally normal experience. And any grief or suffering that I'm feeling behind this, like, is totally acceptable and rational, and it's okay to feel it, but it's not okay to act a fool. Because when the breakup was super messy, I had a bunch of horrible behavior. The way that I tried to get this man to understand my feelings, to feel seen, so that I could, like, essentially, I guess, so that we could have that communication or like the validation, I don't really know. And the way I was so messy about it on my Instagram story, oh my God, that is not emotional regulation at all, which is so funny because I criticize him for not having emotional regulation and for not being mature, when it's like, I was literally doing all the same things, just in a way that was not like in my blind spot. Because like it's very easy to perceive, for me, it's very easy to perceive and pick up on someone else's flaws, but sometimes it's like hard to kind of like step back from the whole situation and be like, oh, like I have a tendency to either be emotionally shut down like my mom or emotionally reactive like my dad. Like I'm outsourcing my validation and my confidence to other people and things and information. Like I'm relying on this person to feel good, for them to understand my feelings, for me to feel like my feelings are worth being understood. I'm putting too much emotional labor on this person because I just want them to feel my sadness, so that like we can relate to each other, or so that I can be pitied or sympathized with, so that like ultimately what I was trying to do was control him through my emotions, which is a huge fucking problem. That's crazy, but that's really what I was taught growing up. Like, if you could throw a fit, then like you would maybe get your way or whatever. Like, I remember I would like get into huge fights with my dad during high school, and I literally remember just getting to points where I was weeping, so frustrated, so upset, and I would literally just tell my dad, like, won't you just act a different way because I'm so sad and you love me? Which, from a child or a high schooler perspective, that should be like a huge check-in for the parent to be like, fuck, what am I doing wrong here? Because my dad would just fight with me more and be like, oh, I'm toughening you up for the real world. And I'd be like, well, I don't want that from my dad. I want that from the real, like, I don't need that from you. And like, why? Basically, me feeling like I wasn't being cared for because my emotions were being overlooked. And so then I carried that through to this relationship, thinking that if I could just get this person to understand me perfectly, that I would be treated better, which is not always the case. And to also put that emotional labor onto someone, like when I was going through the breakup, writing these long letters and sadness and this and that, and trying to help him and tell him about how he could process this feeling or that feeling or the shit he'd been through or whatever. And looking back on it, I'm like, I was an insane person. I was totally emotionally overwhelmed, unable to handle my feelings, focusing too much energy on the wrong things. Even now, like, I wrote out an apology to this person. And now I'm able to contemplate, like, is this apology actually helpful? Or is it just something for me to have? Like, I had become, in the relationship and in my life in general through social media, trying to garner some sort of validation or value, whether that's social capital or emotional connection, through sharing everything about my life, which is just like kind of like an inability to be present and enjoy the things in my body, because I was like feeling like, I guess I would enjoy things more if another person was there to enjoy them with me, because I would be able to feel their enjoyment. So I was like bypassing my whole entire being. And so with the apology, I'm like, is this actually gonna be helpful for him? Useful? Not triggering? Like beneficial? Like, is it worth it to, in a month or two, open up this connection again? Or like, is that, like, can it just be good how it is, that I express myself, and me expressing myself to myself is good enough because I felt it, and all I can feel is my feelings. There's no point in trying to feel other people's feelings, which can be a difficult thing to learn for me. It was, I mean, I guess I kind of understood it and have gotten to the crux of it kind of fast. Who knows if I'll like relapse, because I was looking back at old videos where I was like bringing people into my head, and obviously that's like a problem, something I struggle with a lot. So who knows, like, how many more times I'll go back to that place of trying to enhance my experience through somebody else's presence, which I guess is just living vicariously through someone else, which is one of the reasons why the relationship was so addictive. But yeah, the tools that I've learned up until this point are kind of like those things where it's like no one gets taught them, but everyone needs them. Or, I mean, obviously, like, I picked them up from like YouTube videos. Like, no one's parents teach you that, and no one in school teaches you that, but most people would benefit from it. I think we like don't live in a very emotionally regulated society. I think most people are like very emotionally reactive, even if they say that they're not, or that things don't bother them or get to them, because everyone has their pressure points. And I think like social media has really heightened that like sensitivity and that reactivity, because we've started to tie our identity to so many of these things. So then when it gets attacked, it feels like we're being attacked. But yeah, just the biggest thing for me is like presence with myself and with my emotions, and with like telling myself that like my experience is good enough, and like this is the experience that I get, and like I can be happy like just by myself. which is huge. It's hugely important, and I was a lot better at that in college when I was still smoking, and when I was still texting boys and stuff like that, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting this little validation on the side, so like in real life I'm presenting as confident, but I'm basically, as of now, raw dogging life. I don't want to say completely raw dogging because I am taking supplements and I am eating sugar, but I don't drink and I don't smoke. I microdose shrooms just for my health, not for like fun. And I'm not on social media and I'm not on any dating apps. And my budget is pretty small, so I don't get to do a lot of extra spending, which I realize spending is also like a way that is kind of like numbing. Like, if you can distract yourself with like food and things and shopping, and even if it's small things, even if it's just going to the thrift store because like you're feeling a little down, like that's still like a distraction and a sort of numbing. And I'm not saying don't ever buy anything ever or don't treat yourself ever, but in what I've been experiencing lately, it's been hugely enlightening to the way that I personally kind of pacify myself with the things I have accessible to me. Yeah. I really hope that this coming year, like, I keep working on these skills, keep being present. I think one thing after getting out of the breakup, when I've become literally a monster, an emotional monster, just big and goopy and weepy and horrible, well, I was like, oh, if I'm like genuinely a joyful, happy person, and if anything, and if I'm ever not most of the time feeling like genuinely like happy and light and joyful, like there's something amok that needs attention or needs to be cut out of my life. In that instance, the relationship. And that doesn't mean that I don't let myself feel sadness or upsetness, but it definitely lately, I have been microdosing lithium, 3 milligrams, and that's definitely helped with a huge amount of emotional stability. So I'm not like crying all the time, because fresh out of the breakup, I was crying multiple times every day. On my birthday, cried like 7 times, and oh, it was bad, honey. Oh, it was bad. And I definitely noticed a big difference when I started taking just 2 milligrams of lithium up to 3 milligrams of lithium as a supplement. So, I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not totally raw dogging life, because I think I'd probably go back to being really weepy. But I'm not trying to be like perfectionistic about it. I'm just trying to like enjoy life. And if that helps me, then I think it's worth it. What was I talking about before this? I get so off track. I turn into a monster, an emotional monster. Oh, if I'm not like usually a happy person, like there's something amok. And then not that I don't let myself feel sadness, but it's like, oh, it passes a lot faster recently. Who knows? Every period's different. But I think that's pretty much all I want to say about numbing, emotional dependency, codependency, and emotional regulation. Hopefully I can implement some of those things tonight, because I'm going out dancing and I'm so nervous, but it's going to be good, and I'm going to build my confidence by getting out there and doing what I love. And I'm going to try so hard that when I feel the opinions of other people crowding in my head, I'm going to say, what do I think about myself? Do I think that I'm shit? Okay, well, why? And can I change this? I'm deserving of love. And then hopefully I can kind of like, feel good about myself and be like, hey, I'm showing up for myself. I'm going to try. And that's something to feel good about. So we'll see how it goes. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but I think it's going to be fun. Yeah, that's it. Bye.